Hey folks, so we're going to be doing something a little different today. More at the request of certain individuals that actually want to hear about everything else that I've consumed media-wise in, shall we say, a shorter, less edited, less picked apart manner. This is going to be just a quick off-the-cut review of a bunch of things that I've watched this week, kind of since the new year, really, because there's been a whole bunch of things that I end up watching and I just never get to talk about on the channel, which I think is a real shame. Another reason why I'm doing this is because I am so used to reading a script in front of my microphone. I need to start being more accustomed to thinking and talking into my microphone for myself instead of having it all pasted out in front of me like a teleprompter. Because I talk to people in real life all the time about these movies and things that I've seen, and I can somehow do that okay, but as soon as a microphone's put in front of me, it's like a completely different story. So I hope to change that as 2023 rolls on. It's not a New Year's resolution or anything. It's just that, shall we say, as I mentioned, at the insistence of my friends, I'm going to be doing this from now on. So let me just kick off this video by saying that I am currently working on a review of the 1974 Brian De Palma film Phantom of the Paradise. It is an adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera, the book, not the musical or the film. It's kind of like a musical comedy horror film, I suppose. It's pretty sick. I think it's been requested to me on Patreon, so I literally went into this completely blindfolded, as I do with most of those kind of requests. But yeah, no, it's really good. Anybody who has seen Phantom of the Opera is gonna know kind of what they're going in for, but it is more of a parody than anything else. It hasn't got any really big names to it, I suppose, but the cast is still pretty solid. So I think overall, though, yeah, it's a pretty solid movie. You can't really watch it anywhere at the moment. It's unfortunately, even though it's owned by 20th Century Fox, now owned by Disney, you can't access it on Disney Plus. So I will let you go to your own devices and try and hunt out this movie because it is definitely worth a watch. So what kicked off 2023 for me was Avatar 2, the highly anticipated sequel to the 2009 James Cameron movie, Avatar. It's underwhelming, but I wasn't surprised, really. Most people going into this movie are going for the visuals. I went in for the visuals. There is a seriously solid set of scenes in the middle of the movie, but that is basically the only reason to go and watch it. Everything that they're kind of doing with this underwater idea, it sets off really well. But unfortunately, every line of dialogue makes you want to claw your eyes out, and the story is nothing to go crazy about. It's exactly the same kind of setup as before, really, except you just, with a different texture, I suppose. Human colonization of this alien planet is still going on for a whole another year, and yeah, not a lot has changed. So I think it's still in cinemas at the moment. If it's not, I'd be very surprised. Yeah, I'll give that maybe probably out of 4 out of 10. Maybe go if you really need something to watch for background, or just wait until it comes out on home release and just have it on in the background like a fireplace or a nature documentary or whatever you put on your TV these days when you actually can't be bothered to watch something. So yeah, that's Avatar 2. So I had a little bit of a Netflix binge session with my wife and one evening, and we watched 2 films that I think are worthy of about, close to, if not a solid 9 or 10 out of 10 for both films. So we kicked off with the Knives Out sequel, Glass Onion, which for me, you have to imagine it's kind of like a you have to watch the first Knives Out really to kind of appreciate Daniel Craig's character, but you don't have to, I suppose, because it's a different story. There are a few beats from the first movie that are similar. You have a few kind of parallels, connections, but overall, I did not see the film going where it did. I know a lot of people have said that this new one is predictable. I don't think it is, but then again, I'm not a big Agatha Christie reader or anything. I love a murder mystery, especially ones that can satisfy and keep you interested. It felt like a very intelligent movie, all in all. It's a Rian Johnson film. It's got Daniel Craig, previously mentioned, Ed Norton, and a few others. It's a very, very entertaining, very good movie. Like I say, that's on Netflix. And right after that, we watched Thomas Vinterberg's Another Round. In Danish, it is called Druk, meaning binge or binge drinking. I think that's the word for it. This is his 2020 movie. So it has actually been out a couple of years now, but it is on Netflix now, and thank God. It is a masterpiece. Like I say, if foreign language movies are not your thing, then skip on to the next film that I'm going to talk about. But I've got no problem reading subtitles throughout a movie, and honestly, the main real appeal of this film is Mads Mikkelsen, who plays a teacher that essentially experiments with a few of his colleagues to see if he can teach on the daily whilst having a 0.5% blood alcohol intoxication, shall we say. And the results are amazing. I mean that in a kind of like half serious way, because obviously, alcohol is one of these drugs that induces. It's what I think it's the only drug that actually makes people more aggressive, something like that. I don't know where I heard that from, but anyway, so it's a really interesting kind of almost scientific look at the effects of alcohol on a profession, because the way they do it is that they only drink when they're teaching Monday to Friday, and they're sober for the rest of the time. And I did wonder how these characters didn't have hangovers for most of the time, but the film kind of glossed over that really, because everything else that it explores is just genius, like the emotional toll on these characters, and also some of the surprising effects that come from this experiment. Like I say, the alcohol kind of incites courage in a weird way as well, and that kind of plays into how these characters behave, teach, all of that. I think this was an absolutely almost perfect movie. It is absolutely worth watching if you can sit through a foreign language film. The next thing I want to talk about is Happy Valley, Season 3, Episode 1. So for those that don't know, this is a BBC drama, I believe it's BBC, that's been kind of hidden in the background for a few years now, because I think its first couple of seasons were in the middle of the 2010s. They had two series, I should say, starring Sarah Lancashire. So Sarah Lancashire plays Catherine Kaywood, a police officer who's had a few very traumatic events in her life, shall we say. It's set in the north of England, and it is honestly some of the most harrowing British drama I've ever seen. It is written excellently. It has a very deadpan and dry sense of humour. And it has got a fantastic selection of characters. The cast is fantastic as well. The police officer, who is the main character, Catherine Kaywood, her grandson's father is a hardened criminal. So she is kind of at loggerheads with this teenager, or young boy in the first seasons now grown up, because there has been a bit of a gap between the seasons, season 2 and this final season 3. But it is very, very good, and it is kicked off very well as well. Would highly recommend that people watch the very start of Happy Valley, and it's coming out weekly on Sundays on BBC, and it's very good, very good. Very bleak though, definitely not something you want to put on if you're a fan of the Avatar movies, perhaps. So we then move on to the next thing, and at last I have finished the Rings of Power. This is Amazon's adaptation, shall we say, of Tolkien material. I'm not too sure what extent they have kind of taken his works and turned them into their own thing. I don't know if this is based on something that Tolkien wrote. I know that the show is being advised by one of Tolkien's relatives. I don't know. I'm assuming it's his son that shows up in the credits. But basically, you have to imagine young Galadriel and her kind of exploits before she became the big elven goddess that we know of her in The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Because this, I believe, takes place in the Second Age of Lord of the Rings, and that's a whole can of worms I would rather not open. But honestly, it hasn't got any real kind of famous names attached to it aside from the Tolkien family's representative who is advising the show. So yeah, the stars are all fresh. I don't recognize any of the writers or directors in it. And, being a fan of Lord of the Rings myself, I thought, okay, this is supposed to be one of the most expensive series ever made as well, bear in mind. And it was an absolute tragedy. The entire thing is so empty and void of life, character, fun. It's just the only thing that I can credit it on is the special effects. And even that is something that I have to be very loose about, because when you have these absolutely massive, wide shots of all of the cities and things that they've made for the show, it does look amazing. Honestly, I'm sure that people who have 4K screens are going to be absolutely in love with this shit. However, when you contrast that with some of the other scenes, say, there are scenes on boats, for example. This is just this is something that seems to happen almost every other episode, maybe more. There are just characters stood around looking at the horizon on boats, having really boring conversations, and it doesn't look good at all. It's really hilarious how they kind of clash, like the special effects from scene to scene. But anyway, yeah. So all in all, I watched all 8 episodes. I've got a thing where I'll watch 4 episodes of a show, and if I don't like it, I will drop it there. And I abided by this rule, and I did stop watching it after episode 4 because I couldn't get into it, could not enjoy it. And then, shall we call it peer pressure, found me watching the last 4 episodes, and they did not live up to the hype either. There is absolutely nothing redemptive in that final half. There are some revelations that don't make a single ounce of sense. Either that, or they were predictable from the offset. Honestly, stay away from the Rings of Power. But if you do want to watch it, it is on Amazon Prime. Tread there lightly. Last night, we're kind of coming to the back end of things that I watched. We had another kind of double bill movie event. I watched the original Knives Out to see if it was as good as as I remembered it, because I remember watching it when it came out and absolutely loved it. And exactly the same thing happened, really. It goes without saying. This is the original Knives Out is just as good, perhaps even better than Glass Onion. So definitely, I've probably already said it before, but just watch these two murder mystery movies, Knives Out, Rian Johnson, absolutely fantastic. Don't need to really say more about that one. And the other film that we watched after that was The Wonder, starring Florence Pugh. She is a British nurse who, in the 1800s, I think, has gone to visit a young girl who in Ireland, who has essentially, or allegedly, not eaten a scrap of food for an entire year. She's on some kind of fast. And I won't lie to you guys, the first 15 minutes had me intrigued, as a lot of these kind of Netflix-produced movies do, and then it completely took a nosedive from there. I just lost complete interest, and there wasn't enough of a focus on the mystery of how this girl had eaten nothing for a whole year to keep me interested. And I kind of was just like, I'm turning this off. I can't even give it a goddamn rating. Like, it was just so empty of kind of anything. Like, I mean, I don't know why Florence Pugh keeps getting given these really bland roles. Like, we watched Don't Worry, Darling last year, which was equally bland. But even still, like, yeah, the mystery of these films just end up kind of going nowhere, and they don't really kind of intrigue me enough to persevere with it through to the end. So instead, we chucked on Avatar: The Last Airbender, the original series. I've watched it probably about 6-7 years ago for the first time. Absolutely loved it, and having the exact same response again. It's just brilliant. It's funny, it's well written, and everything makes sense. It's like every single episode has its own unique little challenge to overcome, and it's always handled really brilliantly. Like, the balance between comedy and seriousness is it does it brilliantly. You've got, I should also mention that this show has Dave Filoni at the back of it, so any Clone Wars fans should definitely check out Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think we're about halfway through the first series again now. We just binged through that because it is just so enjoyable. And oddly, I have a memory of the first series not being that good. And maybe that's just because season 2 and 3 end up being very, very good as I remember them, but also, like, I'm now thinking, why on earth was I so derisive of the first series all that time ago? Because it is just brilliant. Yeah, can't fault that either. And you can watch that on Netflix as well in the UK currently. I think that pretty much rounds out everything that I've watched for the first week of 2023. Let me know if this kind of content works for you. I'm gonna try and keep this up on the weekly. Don't forget to subscribe, check out the Patreon page. Let me know if there's anything particularly new in cinemas or on streaming services that I should check out that you'd like to hear me talk about on the next Harry's Hot Takes.